Now that we have a context diagram, functional decomposition allows us to take that high-level system and break it down into the steps we need to understand it. So think of it this way. Systems do a lot of big things. And when I say, okay, what is all the stuff that's happening inside of even my little simple Android app, there's a lot to explain. And code is not big. Code is very small. Code basically allows you to manipulate one variable at a time. I can make one assignment. I can make one print statement. I can update one element of an array. Then I loop around and do a bunch of them. Eventually it builds up to something big, but really one line of code can not do much. I can call a method, which then does one more line of code, things like that. So we need to be able to build a gap. We need to basically take on this elephant and eat it. And how do you eat it? Well, one bite at a time. And so what we want to do is we want to decompose the functions. We have a context, and we have this high-level inputs that we know. And we need to find a way of taking those inputs and putting those outputs. And really, the high-level inputs is stuff like log in, add this, and do that. And so the functional decomposition, even from that context diagram, might spawn off a number of things I need to do. Now, understand, it's not user actions we're desiring for in our design. We're not here trying to say, well, what are all the different things a user can do? What we really want to be able to do is capture what are the things the system does. What am I going to be writing code for? The requirements is focused on the users and what do the users do. The design is there to say, what do I do in response to those users? So when a user clicks a button, what are the steps I need to make happen? So forget about the users. What do I need to do to break this down? What do I need to do to capture and make those services happen? Now, this is the high-level major features that I want to break down. The requirements have given us those major features, and so what I want to do is move away from the what this is happening here into the how it's going to happen. And that's the tough part. That's where things start to get a little bit interesting and challenging inside of there. So what we have there is just a really basic introductory, a really basic start into the context diagram of what the requirements say that are going on inside of there. And so the how is where I need to break down that high-level functions into sub-functions, independent functions that when I group together, I get to the high-level functionality. Now, you've probably written some code by now. Hopefully, you're not taking this class never having written some code. I mean, if you have, there might be some challenges, but that's okay. I mean, we'll get through it. But in code, I have lines of code, and I group them up into procedures. Now, those procedures don't normally align exactly to what I have happen. I have procedures out there like print line. Okay, so print line is not meeting a high-level functionality. It's not saying, I don't have something that says print the credit card amount, print the user input. I mean, it's print line. But I can create my own procedure that says print the credit card amount that utilizes things like create the print line. And that's what we're trying to do at this high level. So let's get more specific. That's very theoretical, very, we probably sort of kind of have an idea of what's going on. Let's be more specific. So let's say one of my big major tasks is to have dinner. So the requirement says, thou shalt have dinner. And having dinner then is my job to design. Well, I can break down having dinner a number of different ways. So one of them could be go online, find a menu, order stuff, pay for it, wait, they show up with food. That's one way of having dinner. Now, it's not necessarily a wrong way of having dinner. It could be a perfectly acceptable way of having dinner. It's not necessarily the way that's being shown here. It's one approach to how I have dinner. And our design, as we said before, the point is to communicate how we plan to implement this. And so the steps I'm proposing for having dinner for my design is I want to go procure some food, buy it. I want to prepare the food, and then I want to consume the food. So the tasks are a good way of having dinner, right? You've probably done that. Maybe you've done that before you watch this video, or you'll do that after you watch this video. They're still pretty high level. So it makes perfect sense. But could you code these tasks? Well, no. I don't have any line of code in Java that says consume food. That makes no sense whatsoever. But in a design at a high level, you will have things as abstract as prepare food. Okay, well, how do I achieve that? Well, I mean, honestly, people have been doing it for a long time. I can look up a recipe. I can put that recipe in front of a chef. I can put that order onside the little screen at the drive-through window to let people order what they want to, and then I can ship it over to the guys cooking in back or the ladies cooking in back. Doesn't matter what gender they are, the people cooking in back, and then I go pick up that food later on. There can be human elements even inside of these high-level processes. So my job is to put the design of how do I define my inputs and outputs to the people to allow these things to get back around. So this high-level decomposition needs to be decomposed further. If it's too abstract to code or to clearly know what to code, then I probably need to have some further decomposition. And I can do it using the same techniques. So I need to better understand the system by breaking down what do I mean by how do I solve this problem. Functional decomposition, as I said, is top-down for the most part. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to meet in the middle to existing features that are out there. As I said, I know we have Printline out there, and I can use Printline, and once I can figure out where I'm going to use Printline, then cool, I've probably designed far enough. If it's really clear what the next step is, I've probably designed far enough. But until I get there, I have to continue to break stuff down. So let's continue to do that. Let's say now, procuring food. I want to go off and buy some food. How do I break down this task? Well, I need to select the groceries. I need to pay for the groceries. I need to bag the groceries. Okay, so this is a little bit more detailed. It's not entirely clear how this would happen inside of a software context, but I'm starting to get to the point where maybe I can see how this would happen. So selecting the groceries. Well, I could look up the recipe for what's going to be on the menu. I can find the items from a source such as Peapod, and then I could send over requests to create a shopping cart of those items. Paying for the groceries could happen through PayPal. All I have to do is get user login information for PayPal. And if it's part of the Peapod system, it allows me to, I don't know if you have that everywhere in the country, but that's, I'd say, at least in the Midwest, there's this service called Peapod that allows you to order food and order groceries, and they'll deliver them to your house. But hey, there's a way to order the food. There's a way to pay for it, and then the bagging. Well, maybe what I do is I send an email over to our receiving department and tell them that we should be expecting a delivery truck in the next half a day or something like that, and they should be receiving these items and to stock them up when they get there. So here you can see I could have an automated system for breaking it down and start to get to the point of being able to code that. Now, again, we'll probably have to break down each of these tasks further until I get to the point of being able to write code, but this is the approach you're going to be looking at. Now, this doesn't tell us how we're going to do that. That's what's going to be the next lecture in these series. But at least we now have defined the process by which you can break things up. So stick with me. We're going to get to the types of things you'd be documenting in what's truly called a data flow diagram. But think about your solution at the high level and how you break down those steps to get to something. Again, it's not about user interactions. It's things that you will code, things that you have to write code for that might not interact with people, but it's not just the customer necessarily straight up high. Not everybody's going to have huge applications they're building, so don't get too grandiose with this. You might be able to break this down in 1 or 2 steps, the whole thing, ready to go. This one, obviously this example would take a little bit more. So stick with me and we'll get to documenting it next.